welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And on this episode, we're going to kind of get into a broad view of the AFC South with all the different things going on. And of course, we're going to talk about my guest. I'm pretty sure some people have seen him on Around the Horn. If you haven't seen him there, you've definitely read his work in Andscape. That would be Martenzie Johnson. What's going on, man?
Mike, it's been a long time coming. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, you have seen me around the horn. You see me on ESPN Radio, see me on Andscape, all these places. Hopefully, if not now, you can read up on me now. There's only one person named my name, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Right. Google is your friend, people. Google is your friend.
Well, but, not as much as it used to be, but yeah, Google is your friend, though. Yeah.
Right. Before we get a little bit, further on in the show, I do have to say the show is sponsored by Manscaped. Manscaped.com. You can go there and get 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code AFC South. Again, Manscaped.com. You go there, promo code AFC South, free shipping. You say say you're welcome or thank you or whatever you want to say. But hey, go there, check it out, see what all they have to offer you. Maybe a Christmas gift for somebody. You never know. Just check it out. Again, promo code AFC South, manscaped.com. Now, before we get to talking about you and then also talking about the AFC South, I do want to say, I do have to do my get off your chest segment, which beginning of every show, I talk about something I want to get off my chest or something that made me, angry, mad, or something I'm excited about. This episode, got to talk about the rematch from the NFC Championship game last year. That would be the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, if those that don't remember last year, I'm going to kind of take you back. The first series the San Francisco 49ers had, Brock Purdy drops back. Now, they tried to block Hassan Reddick with George Kittle, which that was the first mistake. Anyway, Hassan Reddick beats the block, hits Brock Purdy, injures his elbow. Now, all season, he gets elbow surgery. He made it back for this season. Josh Johnson comes in and replaces him. For those that don't know Josh Johnson, he's been on like 2011. He comes in and replaces him. He gets injured, and then they have no quarterback. They literally have no quarterback for majority of the rest of the game. Of course, plenty of 49ers fans and the 49ers were talking about they didn't have a quarterback and it'd be different. They did. Eagles fans saying, oh, well, you lost the game, things like that, which honestly, I think if they had a quarterback, it'd be a different, outcome potentially. But here we are. All that talk, all those different things. Of course, Hassan Reddick had something he said. And, of course, Deebo Samuel answered that by saying basically, he's kind of done with the talking and, we'll see you on Sunday. And, Hassan Reddick was talking about all the boo-hooing and things like that. And if the 49ers were doing what, honestly, I think they were just stating facts that they didn't have a quarterback. But, Of course, people were saying it's boo-hooing. But it all gets to get settled on the field now with the 49ers and that physical defense, who might I add, they did add Chase Young from the Washington Commanders, who did give the Eagles trouble earlier in the season. They have that going against Elaine Johnson, who actually is hobbled with a groin injury going into this game. And the high-powered Eagles offense, which is led by MVP candidate Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Monte Smith. You've got DeAndre Swift. You got all those different pieces. Then on the defensive side of the ball, you have all those guys up front that they have, led by the veteran Fletcher Cox and veteran Brandon Graham. I mean, they've got pieces on both sides of the ball, but the 49ers do too. So I'm very happy to see this game. And I'm very happy to see that, I'll say this. I'm interested to see if the 49ers can exact some kind of revenge or some kind of, I guess some kind of revenge, even though it's the regular season game, on the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, they have a good chance just because, like you said, and I think anyone who has argued on the 49ers side has a point. Like 31-7 is a beatdown no matter how you put it, but they had Josh Johnson out there. Like you said, like this man has been on practically every team in the league. God bless him. He seems to be a nice gentleman. They keep him around on all these teams, so I guess it's a good kind of locker room presence. But I look forward to this as well because while I might have had questions about Brock Purdy at this point last year. The questions have pretty much been answered. There's some fluky stuff every now and then, but like he's about as good as advertised. And but for him being Mr. Irrelevant, I think there would be less questions about whether or not this is a fluke or not. But like, y'all, he's essentially done this for an entire calendar year. I think he's legit. I've seen some of the passes like Josh Johnson can't make them passes. Even Jalen Hurts can't even make some of the passes I've seen Brock Purdy make. So yes, I very much look forward to this. You understated it. You mentioned Fletcher Cox and Graham and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Like it's nasty. And on the flip side, with the 49ers, obviously Chase Young, Bosa. While I prefer offense and I would prefer a 34-30 game or something like that, I think it's going to be in the teens just because the defenses are just that good. And all of which I just said about Brock Purdy, he isn't like a top 5 quarterback. And then Jalen Hurts has not really played like a top 5 quarterback for most of the season. He's picked it up obviously in the last couple of weeks, but yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty low scoring game, but I look forward to it because sometimes, aside from having a high scoring game, if it's just a bunch of dudes running into each other the whole time, like, you can't really pass that up, Mike.
It's going to be definitely interesting. And then also another, a little bit of a tidbit on this game. Hargraves, the defensive lineman, he played for the Eagles last year. He signed a big-time deal with the San Francisco 49ers this offseason. So he's on the opposite side of this one this year. That'll be interesting to see if he kind of brings a little bit of tidbits or a little bit of knowledge to the 49ers front against the Eagles offensive line.
Like I don't understand. Like the Eagles with their defensive linemen are like the Steelers and the Vikings when it comes to receivers, because every time I look up, they let a really good one go, and then suddenly they're replaced by an even better one. And I don't know how they do it because most teams can't even find one good edge rusher or one good defensive tackle. And yet the Eagles somehow can let Hargraves go and then have Jalen Carter come and replace him. Like it's mad that actually, now this is a rant that I've been wanting to get off. So like, bear with me. How do the Eagles keep getting these players? I know Zach Ertz isn't much of anything left at this point, but like they're about to get him. Their number 2 receiver won a Heisman, which in the 2020s and the 2010s, you got to be damn good because that's basically a quarterback award at this point. And they got AJ Brown and they got Jalen Hurts, who they got in the second round somehow because all these other teams didn't want him. And then the Lions just gave him DeAndre Swift. Like it's it's infuriating that they can be so like their second unit is better than a lot of first units in the NFL. And I'm sick of them continuing to get away with this. All that being said, I think the Eagles will win. I will root for them. So,
There we go. I think the 49ers will win this game. But hey, we'll see what happens. It's regular season game. They'll probably see each other in the playoffs this year as well. So we'll see what happens. That's the Get It Off Your Chest segment for this episode. But kind of moving forward, we got to talk about your career. Mm-hmm. I mean, when did you kind of begin the writing journey? When did that start for you?
As far as like writing overall, that's like elementary school, creative writing classes, those sorts of things. But as far as wanting to be an actual journalist, literally like a couple months before I started undergrad. I didn't know particularly what I wanted to do. Certain parents are like, you're going to school, but they don't necessarily say like what you have to do, but it's just like you going to college. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going. I might as well figure out what I want to do. And I mentioned the kind of creative writing. So I did that throughout middle and high school and was pretty good at it. It came pretty naturally to me. And I figured like an English major, like if you're good with language, if you're good with that writing and that sort of thing, that seems like the way to go. For some reason, I thought, why don't I do journalism as a minor? I didn't know anything about the profession. It's crazy because most people will say, oh, I've been watching, whether it be ESPN or whatever it is, since I was little and I've had desire to work there. Or I used to read this Sports Illustrated writer or this newspaper columnist, and it made me want to. I didn't do none of that. I didn't. Only thing I read with newspapers was like box scores. but I wasn't heavy into reading the news. And so I knew little about journalism, but I was like, whatever, just use it as a minor. My mom talked me into switching them. It's like she was an English major. She's like, you probably don't actually want to do that, which, might have led to a life of like being an English teacher. And I don't think that would have worked out for me. So I switched it. I didn't even end up doing an English minor, but I just went with journalism, and I kind of got thrown into it my freshman year, where again, these kids are talking about I can't even remember, but like the professor had mentioned, sort of as like a joke, but like I would have to be in the know to understand it. But the fair and balanced tagline that Fox News used, and like he was like basically how hypocritical that was. And like, I don't get what you're talking about because I don't even know anything about Fox News. The only thing I know about Fox is the channel that like The Simpsons come on. So I had to learn a lot about journalism and kind of journalism outlets. And, so through those years, just, getting more familiar with the profession, I didn't know what kind of direction I wanted to go, because obviously you can do political news, you can do health, you can do community, state, local, whatever it may be. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was just kind of learning the profession through school. And finally, I think I realized, look, man, you've been watching sports most of your life. You've been following it pretty loosely. Why don't you just put the two together and do it that way? And yeah, so one day I just decided that. And you don't know me that well. Your audience doesn't know me that well. But like, if I do something, or if I say I'm going to do something, I'll kind of stick to it. I don't really like to change direction. So even on the days where I was like, what have I gotten myself into? I have no idea what these people are talking about. I couldn't tell you what the lead to a news story is. I kind of just kept at it and continued to learn and got better at it. And I could bore you with some of the intermediate stuff, but yeah, I got a job out of school at ESPN as sort of a they call it a media associate, but that can be pretty broad, but like an editor, sort of editor track. And so I spent some time that first year bouncing around different departments, figuring out what I wanted to do. Ended up in the fantasy department of all places. And so I was an editor for the ESPN fantasy group. And I did that for about a year, but it just wasn't my passion. I know I played fantasy football in like Yahoo groups. That's how far back it goes for me. Since I was like 12 or something. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just something to do on the computer. So it was always something there, but it just wasn't really a passion of mine. And then around 2016, the undefeated, now Andscape, came around, and that's sort of the stuff that I was studying in school. I learned about journalism, obviously, and then mixed in sports in there and wanted to be a sports journalist, but then also, writing about race in sports, which is something that obviously has been done for years, right? Decades, centuries. But, trying to marry those three things together. And, I kind of found a lane for myself just because that's what I was studying in school. That was the whole master's thesis about race in sports. And so that was what I'm most comfortable with. So I switched over to that. And then 8 years later, boom, here we are.
There we go.
Long-winded way to answer your question.
That's all right. People need to hear the story and the journey. But speaking of journey, of course, your journey didn't stop at writing. Now you're doing radio, you're doing Around the Horn. How did Around the Horn kind of come around? With guys like David Dennis Jr. and I know Monica McNutt's been on there, Bill Plaschke, and others. How did that kind of come about for you to pop up on there?
The long answer is COVID. Before 2020, I had no desires really to do TV. I'd done some one-offs on ESPN, but like nothing really all that consistent. And then 2020 happened, and by 2020, I know that implies COVID, but COVID plus kind of George Floyd. And, you saw it all, all the black squares on Instagram and everyone from Gushers to JCPenney to whoever putting out statements saying like they support Black Lives and all that stuff. But it started a lot of diversity initiatives. And one of those was it wasn't technically ESPN, but within the few producers there and like trying to get more people of color and women on air in different parts of the company, just because, you know, it's a white male dominated industry. I don't think I need to tell you that, or really anyone listening. And so it was sort of like a pilot program to kind of teach us how to be kind of ESPN personalities. And so I was a part of that. You mentioned David Dennis. He was part of that. Justin Tinsley was a part of that. Monica McNutt was a part of that. So early 2020, Tarika, who was on there last week, she was a part of that. So we were just like having around the horn, but it was just smaller scale. Obviously, it wasn't through ESPN; it was just through Zoom, which all of us were using at that point, and just teaching us how to like go through the reps of doing ESPN television. And so, you know, doing that for about a year, get more comfortable with that, and really was just out of the blue one day. I was like, "Hey, do you want to come in around the horn?" I was like, Psh, "Say less, my boy." And so, yeah, that's literally how it happened. I wish it was a more fascinating story, but out of the blue on one Friday, I got a call or a text saying, "Hey, this is the producer around the horn. We'll give you a call." I kind of figured that's what it was, but I was like, let me not get too excited. And then I called him and was like, "Hey, we got a spot for you next week if you want to do it." Took it, and then now here we are. And then that, you know, leads to kind of ESPN radio stuff. This is stuff with ESPN Daily. So yeah, now I'm more of a, as they like to say, a cross-platform journalist. But yeah, no, it's not something that, like I said, I never envisioned myself being on Around the Horn or PTI or SportsCenter or First Take growing up, or even while I was in college. I just had no desire to do television. It kind of fell in my lap, and so now I kind of take advantage of that while still doing my writing. Like that's like, for me, that's kind of who I am and how I got into that. So I still definitely want to continue writing, but yeah, I've added a few things to my plate since then.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. We're definitely proud to see you on TV. Proud to see you doing your thing. And you know, one of your newest articles talked about Travis Kelce's business guys.
Yeah.
Now, I gotta ask, how did that story come about?
Yeah, I will give people the behind the scenes, because I know there's a certain idea of how journalism works. Like, I tracked them down. It's like, "Hey, I have this amazing story. You all should participate." No, that ain't how it happened. The PR person was like, "Hey, do you want to talk to these dudes?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I want to talk to them." Because I find, not the Taylor Swift part. Let me just get that out of the way. I'm not fascinated by that. I appreciate her as an artist. I do not care about their relationship. I don't care about anyone's relationship. Let me just start off there. But I did not give, I don't know if I care two shits about that. But I do find Kelce fascinating for multiple reasons. One, how as a tight end, he's become sort of a marketing star somehow, some way. Also, let's be honest, I don't like to use the phrase "he acts black," but like he does, or he did. And you know, I would like some of those questions answered. So when I found out that, of course, his business managers are two black dudes from Cleveland or the Cleveland area, I jumped at the bit to do that. So yeah, they came to us, but you know, I kind of took the story in a direction that I thought was most kind of important and interesting, and it was basically about, you know, how they got into the management business, which of course it comes from having a kind of business background with their dad, being an entrepreneur. How they got into that, how they then went off to college and created a management company while still juniors in college. Like, and what's funny about that is because, like, I like to think that I was very mature for my age, and I definitely wasn't mature enough to like run my own company, and they were able to do that while juniors in college, and signing someone who got drafted in the NFL before they even graduated from college. But then also the story delves into how they met Kelce. And so one of the twins, which I thought was pretty unique too, because usually twins stick together. So if one of them went to the University of Cincinnati, I would think both of them went, but that wasn't the case. One went to Bowling Green and the other went to University of Cincinnati Claremont College. And so that one, he was around University of Cincinnati, which is where Travis and Jason both went to college. And so he met Travis there, but they also had a connection to the Cleveland area, so on and so forth. But basically, the shortest way I can explain this of how they signed the man who we're talking about here, Travis Kelce, is one of the brothers was like a party promoter around the area. And so he would just let Travis and his boys on the football team get into the club for free, jump the line, get in VIP, hook them up, be in a plug essentially. And he was like, yeah, I just kind of parlayed that into, I known him for so long. We kicked it. He trusted us. I just brought it to him, right before he got drafted, like, hey, we got this thing going on. We can work together. And Travis trusted him. And now, all these commercials that you see him in, like that's them. Being on SNL, that's them. Like everything outside of the football field that you see with Travis Kelce is these two black dudes. And I think for a long time they shied away from media attention. Just because in that sort of line of work, like we know who the kind of stars of marketing and stuff are, or the agencies like the CAAs and IMG and that sort of stuff. But some of them like to stay out of the limelight. And so it can be overlooked of, again, a tight end in the NFL hosting SNL. I'm pretty sure he's the first one to have ever done that, right? Like this is a show that had Michael Jordan hosting and Deion Sanders. Who else? I believe Tom Brady did it. Peyton Manning, obviously. And a tight end got on there. And like that just speaks to one, the talent and charisma of Travis, obviously, but the works of these two dudes to for people to trust them that a tight end can sell. And like that's kind of how they explain to me is like we actually do got to kind of work extra hard because normally they want the quarterbacks or the diva like receivers or the running backs, but nope, tight end. And then he brought along his offensive lineman brother and their mother, and now they all are in commercials together. So it's kind of a fascinating story.
Definitely. What's also a fascinating story is the AFC South and what it's turned out to be this year. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but we got to go to a commercial break on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. And of course, the show, Touring the AFC South, we got to talk about the AFC South, So, we got to talk about the surprise team of the AFC South. That would be the Houston Texans. Now,
I thought you were going to say Titans.
We're going to get there and talk about them just a little bit, but got to talk about the surprise, the Houston Texans. Now, no one expected them to be sitting at 6-5, yet here they are. Led by, of course, CJ Stroud and a coach in D'Amico Ryans, who is getting the most out of this team. Now, what is shocking about just watching them or seeing them be at 6-5 this year?
I mean, I think the most obvious thing is CJ Stroud and tangentially Tank Dell, but there's a stigma, and I won't even say it's other people. Like I probably believe in it too, that Ohio State quarterbacks have just not worked out. I don't know why. It's been different coaches, and yet it's the same thing where they don't find similar success in the pros. But quite honestly, what school has a great track record of quarterbacks in the NFL, right? So, I came into the draft with that line of thinking, but I also thought, no matter the success that Bryce Young had at Alabama, I did think the size thing, it wasn't necessarily height, right? Like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson have kind of shown you that the height thing it's a thing, but like if you're good enough, you kind of overcome it. But it's like he's small, right? And so I thought that, David Tepper and those types were like want the biggest quarterback they can find. He looks like he just watches football but doesn't quite understand it. So it's like he's going to go for the biggest guy he could. And CJ seemed to stand out in that way. But I still had my reservations. I was like, it's a toss-up. We can go either way. What he's shown, though, has far exceeded any expectations that I could have had. It's not just like, oh, he has an amazing throw every now and then. It's not just that. Like all these dudes can throw the ball. Like you wouldn't be an NFL quarterback if you couldn't throw the ball. But the poise, the stepping up in the pocket, the like coming up with solutions on the fly. I'm gonna imagine he's 22 or something like that. He shouldn't be able to be doing that right now. Some quarterbacks never learn that. And to watch him do that and games be on the line, even in this last one, which they ended up losing, but to have the poise to get him down the field and put him in the field goal range-ish, and not kind of falter. And that interception streak or lack of interception streak, like that speaks volumes that as a first-year player on a team that is recovering or was recovering from the whole Deshaun Watson thing and were just a joke the last couple seasons, to come in with that sort of pressure and not falter one bit. And that means not turning the ball over and quite honestly, not turning the ball over in a stupid ways, which is what a lot of first year quarterbacks do. Like that has stood out to me the most, because he shouldn't be able to do this. And yet he seems to be kind of wise beyond his years. And again, with that stain of Ohio State quarterback legacy in the NFL, I just never guessed that could happen. And so I do not remember which game. I can't remember the opponent, but when they came back and actually did pull off, I think it was the 39-37. I think I remember the score. What was that? It was a home game for them. It was like a month ago. But either way, that game, that's when I knew for sure. It's like, nah, like this ain't a fluke. Like this kid's for real. And as long as, with DeMeco Ryans as the coach, it seems like he should be fine. But as long as kind of coaching doesn't get in the way, I think we're looking at kind of the next guy. Like we've been looking for, even though he's only like 26, we're looking for like the next Mahomes already. Like, there you go, right there.
Yeah.
Simple.
Okay. All right. Bobby Slowick definitely deserves some credit too. He is the offensive coordinator for the Texans. He also came from the 49ers with DeMeco Ryans. So that's always it's very interesting just to see that offense. And you have two guys at wide receiver that could potentially get 1,000 yards. You have Tank Dell, 47 receptions, 709 yards, 7 touchdowns. And you got Nico Collins, 50 receptions, 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. Basically, you could have 2,000-yard receivers for the Houston Texans, which I don't think anyone would have thought that was going to happen before the season.
Yeah, I'm assuming most would assume they would have one. Ever since Hopkins left, and even then, towards the end of it, Hopkins, as he shown this, like he's the injuries are piling up just because you're older. But who like that's the thing too that sometimes is missing. From evaluations of first-year quarterbacks is usually their wide receivers and running backs suck too. And it's kind of, I'm looking at just because I'm off screen, it's next to me, but like Robert Griffin III. And what helped him was that he also had a rookie running back who ran for like 1,600 yards, right? And so he has help. And it will probably be a different CJ Stroud that we're seeing if he didn't have Dale and Collins. But Dale in particular, I'm not bullish on small receivers. Now I know easily you can say, what about Tyreek Hill? Yeah, but like he's the fastest human alive. Like he's an anomaly here. But I'm not bullish on small receivers because sometimes you need a man to just go up there and get it. And like Tank Dell can't do that. But that being said, he's been very impressive. Like I saw one of these passes that Stroud threw to him, I believe last week. It was like 2 yards behind Dale, but like he turns around, contorts his body, catches it, and still reels it in. Like that, just like with Stroud, where he's like, oh no, this dude is legit just off of this one play. The same thing with Tank Dell. Like if you can make a catch like that, I have no problem thinking that you're going to be, a kind of top 10 sort of receiver. But the height thing is going to be an issue. There's no way around it. But that being said, like he's just really good, and then Nico Collins obviously is great too.
Yeah. Nico Collins, I'm pretty sure Michigan fans are going to see him play like that. But we're going to switch over another team that's been surprising that no one really thought was going to be as good as they are. That would be the Indianapolis Colts. They're 6-5 as well. Of course, Anthony Richardson's out for the year, but they have Gardner Minshew and Minshew Mania, getting in the end zone and shimmying on people. I have no idea where that shimmy came from. But what has surprised you kind of most about that Indianapolis Colts team this year?
Two things. I'll get to Gardner in a second. Zach Moss filling in for Jonathan Taylor. Now, as you can see from my cup, I'm obviously biased in one direction or the other with that running back, situation. But I'm a firm believer in drafting running backs in the first round. Before it was just like, whatever, if they're good enough, if it's Saquon Barkley, if it's Zeke Elliott, or if it's Christian McCaffrey, yeah, draft them, or Bijan Robinson, draft them high. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're great. I've taken a step back on that because, again, what did I just say about the quarterback? If you as a running back don't have a good quarterback, which if the team is drafted high in a draft, you probably don't, like, it's not going to benefit you. You're just going to be called on to take most of the carries and get your body beat up. And then by the time you're 25 or 27 and want your extension, they're just going to throw you out because we already used up your mouse. But I do believe in drafting them later in the first round because let the good teams have them, and then they can actually have some form of success. So I believe that Jonathan Taylor was one of those that, if he was on a good team when he got drafted, he would have been better off. But either way, he's obviously shown that he is great. But Zach Moss is really good, and I guess I don't know what happens with Taylor's contract after this year, but I can see that working together. Now, I think it would be a good tandem, obviously, with Anthony Richardson too, and you got Pittman as a receiver. Like, it could be great for them. But Zach Moss is just exceptional. Gardner, I did not believe in him. I still do not believe in him. And yet somehow, some way, just like that fluke stuff he was doing with the Jaguar, like he keeps pulling it off. But it's like Ryan Fitzpatrick in a sense. Like, yeah, he'll be great when he's great, but like when he's bad, he's Gardner Michigan. You're right. Like it's the reason he's jumped around on 3 different teams in 3 years. Like he all right, but I'm just you can't talk me into Minshew mania or whatever. He doesn't even take himself seriously. So why should I?
I totally hear you there. The funniest thing, well, I don't say the funniest thing, but anyway, watching the game last week, he actually ran into a sack. He ran out of the pocket. He's over there running around. He's seeing people are running around, whatever. So you think he's gonna run, then he just stops, and there's a guy in front of him. I'm like, okay, I know he's gonna throw the football, right? Nope, he throws it at the last minute, of course, but I'm like, what are you doing? Either throw the ball, get rid of it, or run. Don't just stand there. You're a sitting target.
Again, I say, you know what I'm saying? Like the highs are high, right? But like the lows are like butt fumble territory. So like he's someone who I at least think that you can trust per se. He's not, no offense to him, like he's not Josh Johnson, right? I think he's a dependable enough backup. But if they think that like last year when Hurts was missing games and he filled in for him, like, if you think it's going to be the same thing as like a good quarterback or your starting quarterback, like no, but he's serviceable, like whatever. But him getting nicknames and stuff, like just like let's not do that.
Yeah, we're doing a little too much with that.
Yeah, I had to live through like a decade and a half of Fitzmagic. Like I don't want to do that shit again. With Gardner. No offense. He's probably a nice person, but like, come on, man.
I hear you there. Now, I will tell you also that, of course, Jonathan Taylor got his extension, and Zach Moss, I don't know what his contract looks like, but, it definitely is going to be interesting to see those two kind of pound defenses literally, I guess into submission, I would say.
Yeah, but, if Anthony Richardson turns out to be, even 5, 10, 15, 20% better than he's supposed to be, like that's another one of those teams where it's not going to happen next year. Maybe not even the year after that. But if he becomes something mixed with, it's not going to be Moss and Taylor long term, but like one or two of the other, which probably will be Moss. And then with Pittman and everything else, I think that's another team where, that's another team where right now you're not expecting much from them, but I think contender every single year if they make it all work. But that's the big if, because I like a lot of what I saw from Anthony Richardson, but then too, like, bro, you got to stop. You got to stop letting the 300-pound dudes tackle you all the time. Like you have to learn to slide. You got to get down. Like you ain't as big as everyone like you used to be. Like everyone's your size or bigger. So yeah, don't end up like RG3. Like I said.
Right. He's got to use the sidelines. You know how in basketball they say you use the sidelines as an extra defender. Yeah. Use the sidelines as an extra place to help you. There you go. Just
use the grass. Yeah, it's your friend.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the team that was picked by everyone to win the division. That would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they're 8-3, but some would say it's a kind of disappointing 8-3. You know, they played well in some aspects, but they turned the ball over. They got dominated by the 49ers at home. They lost to the Chiefs at home. You know, they didn't have they had a less than stellar offensive game that game.
Yeah.
But to me, I kind of expected, you know, with all those weapons they have Christian Kirk, they have Calvin Ridley, they have Zay Jones, which I like to call Zay Jones Bruce Leroy. But if you see the picture of him, he looks just like Bruce Leroy in Barry Gordy's Last Dragon. But, you know, and then you have Evan Ingram, you have Travis Etienne, you have all those weapons. And I thought this offense could put up at least 30 points a game with all those weapons. But they are still doing Jacksonville things in terms of turning the football over, things like that. But still, they're 8-3. You know, it just seems like something is missing with this team this year, despite all those weapons and what they should be doing offensively.
Yeah, they feel like, and I'm looking at the rest of their schedule, which is I don't care home or away, but Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Tennessee. So they very well will likely go 13-4. I don't want to say it feels like the Vikings from last year, but like it does feel like the Vikings from last year, where if you win 13 games, like you're supposed to be like, oh, like the Eagles or like the Chiefs, because only good teams win 13 games. It's like, and that's not to say that the Jaguars are bad, but I think that I don't think that record is going to reflect like how good they are compared to some of the better teams. Like you said, they've won some ugly games. What was the London, the first, the Falcons game, which they won by 16, but watching that, I mean, Ritter gave that one away. And then what was the other one? Was that Buffalo? That was impressive. But again, Josh Allen, and this team, the Jaguars, have the real Josh Allen. That's what I call him, who has been obviously fantastic. But it does feel. I don't want to be rude, but right, it's like everyone has a chance once they get to the playoffs. But I think this is one of those teams you look at and just like, even if they have 14 wins, which is still a possibility for them, I don't think they even make it into the conference championship. You know, like it's just when you play, when your wins are against, you know, the Falcons and the Colts and the Saints and whatever is the Pittsburgh Steelers, like it doesn't lend much confidence to me, but they are an exciting team. Trevor Lawrence, finally, I think he isn't the world beater that I was told by the experts that he was going to be coming out, but he obviously has improved since that kind of disastrous first season. But that was Urban Meyer. You can't really blame him for that. So, but no, the schedule has kind of benefited them. But I will say you play the games that you're scheduled to play, and so they won them. And you know they're a good team, but I don't think they are what their record reflects.
Yeah, definitely. I just I don't know. Do I think they could be a dark horse potentially? Maybe if they kind of hit the right streak at the right time or get the right combination of opponents, but you really shouldn't be saying that about a team that potentially be 13 or 14 wins, to be honest. You really should.
And like one of the teams they're playing is Baltimore, which I'm in team free agency right now. I don't have one, and I'm thinking of Baltimore just because they're kind of up the road for me. But they're another one where it's like I don't care if they finish 14-3 or 13-4. And this was before Mark Andrews got hurt. I don't believe in them. Like it's they spur me too many times in important moments that as much as I want it to be a thing, it's not a thing. I think the same thing kind of applies to the Jaguars, where I think you got to show me before I believe that, that's what you're capable of actually doing.
Well, I will tell you before the season got started, I did have them as part of my Super Bowl prediction. That would be I had the rematch. This is basically my Super Bowl prediction.
Yeah.
The 49ers and the Ravens in the Beyonce Super Bowl rematch. That's what I had. But
I was 23. I feel old since that. Or 24. I don't think that's gonna happen, but yeah, it was a good game.
You never know. It'll be fun. But of course we can't leave this division without talking about the team that is in the basement for right now. That would be the Tennessee Titans. Not necessarily the season that they wanted. Of course, they're 4-7, but the interesting thing is they've lost all their games on the road. They won all their games at home. And they have another home game this week against the Indianapolis Colts. So is it just interesting that they are one of the teams that is undefeated at home, despite how they kind of have looked, the stark difference home and away?
No, I mean, you're supposed to be better at home, right? And sometimes the shitty teams are good at home too. I haven't read the piece, but we had one up on ESPN.com about how it's been beneficial for them to be at home. That's my only explanation is that, I don't know, the other teams are just scared to come to Nashville. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. But you still have Derrick Henry as your running back, so like you got that going for you. But Will Levis had that good first game, and it was funny that someone on Twitter told me like, oh, like Will Levis is a man. Like it's gonna happen. I was like, I mean, respectfully to Josh Dobbs, but like sometimes like if they don't expect you to start, bro, like you might just have a good game because you caught him off guard, and he been all right, but like the fact that they had a three-way controversy essentially for quarterback shows you that ain't none of them dudes really all that great. They're good enough, but it's falling apart for them. But I think they are a year late to kind of tearing it down. Like the 2018 playoffs seems so long ago at this point, or 2019, and like you should have traded Derrick Henry. Like I don't know. Like it's clear 4.2 yards per carry, I think is where he at. Like he should be closer to 6. Well, not should be. He was closer to 6 before, and he was you should have seen this coming, and they didn't get out of ahead of it, and now they're kind of stuck. I don't even like unless Will Levis makes the big jump next year. They're gonna be in a doghouse for a few years. They're not fun to watch. They've never really been fun to watch, but they're just they're a boring team to watch. I don't particularly care for it, but they beat the Panthers, so you got that going for you. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you this. One thing I would say is probably the biggest kind of thing that's kind of kind of hindered anyone to see whether Levis can actually be the guy or not, is they don't have consistent offensive line play. That's been the huge thing that has been there throughout the years. And this year at the left tackle spot, they started off with Andre Dillard, and that didn't end very well. I know you saw the tape where they had a tight ends going in motion with God, now I'm forgetting names, in the Cleveland game where they had tight ends going in motion with following just their pass rushers. Yeah, you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So that
was a Brown. Yeah, it was
Miles Brown.
Garrett.
Yeah, Miles Garrett. Yeah, and so they had that, and they had those different things. They just haven't been as strong up front. So I think that's probably the biggest issue they have. If they're stronger up front, they can do some of the things they want to do. It isn't necessarily the most exciting brand of football. I definitely agree there. But yeah, I think that is the biggest thing where they have to, work on things. The biggest thing for them is they have $100 million in cap next year, and they also have draft picks, so they can actually. So Rand this offseason, Rand couldn't necessarily, I would say just based off the money available, couldn't necessarily do all the things you want to do with a limited budget. Now next
Yeah.
season, you got $100 million. You kind of do a little bit more. So it'll be interesting just to see how Rand makes this team, or if he tries to make this team kind of in the vision of where he came from, which is San Francisco. So
yeah, and you mentioned offensive line. Like basically at this point, if you want your team to be even remotely successful, and I'm not even just talking about being on the edges of the playoffs, I'm talking about like winning a playoff game, invest heavily in your offensive line, because it feels as if only like 4 teams have an offensive line that can protect their quarterback. Because I don't remember which game it was even last week. I think it was either the Monday night or Thursday night, not the one that from yesterday, but last week, where it was just the quarterbacks running around the entire time because they can't hold up against any of these pass rush. They can't even hold up against like 4 people rushing. It mucks up the game, and you're not going to win anything if your quarterback can't even stay upright for 2 seconds. And so if that's an issue for Tennessee, then like, yeah, make that priority number 1 before you go give a $20-30 million contract to one player. Like, just think through this. And because like, yeah, if Will Levis can't stand up, Will Levis can't be whatever the team fans, whoever you think he can become. Like, if he's on his back the entire time, like you're not going to see anything from him.
That's true. That's true. Well, definitely had to go through the AFC South with you, man. Definitely, you gave some great takes, some interesting takes. But, you know, of course, that is not the end of the show. The end of the show is the game portion of the show. We have 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Can be anything on sports, can be anything else, too. Are you ready?
I didn't know this was coming, so yes. I am ready.
All right. Writing or television work, which one do you enjoy the most?
Enjoy television.
Television. Okay.
It takes less time. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Which one did you enjoy more? You got Madison, Wisconsin, or Columbia, Missouri? Which place did you enjoy more?
Oh, Madison, Wisconsin, by far, 10 times out of 10. Yeah.
Did you actually get out there and jump around a couple times?
Oh yeah, no. House of Pain is my shit. Yeah. No, like I know, people have an idea based on jump around and crowd shots of what Madison, Wisconsin is. It's definitely that. Don't get me wrong, but like there's some of us there too. We have fun. I like jump around. I like go to the games. It's cool. But yeah, Madison, Wisconsin, through and through. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give you this one since we talked about Wisconsin. Their careers at Wisconsin. You taking Ron Dane or you taking Jonathan Taylor?
Whichever one carry for less. Like, I know a Heisman is important, right? I know winning the Rose Bowl, but like less mileage is better. And something tells me Jonathan Taylor probably had less mileage just because I think he played less years. So yeah, I'll say Jonathan Taylor.
Okay. All right. Now, okay, we're going to go to a little bit of we're going to go to iconic Black movies. We've got Love and Basketball or Love Jones. You got one movie. Which one?
Love and Basketball. Yeah, I don't even know. I'm not a Love Jones stan, to be quite honest with you. The little I recall from the movie, because I haven't watched it in a long time, like it was a bad relationship. Anyway, it wasn't one that they like you should aspire to be in. Now, I know what you're saying. Love and Basketball is probably a worse depiction of that. Yeah, but like the soundtrack's better. I don't know. Yeah, I love it.
All right. And the last question I got for you. You got one album. Both these albums came out in 1994, just to give you that. But we have Reasonable Doubt, Jay-Z, or Illmatic, Nas. Which album would you take?
The one I've heard multiple songs on rather than like one. That'd be Reasonable Doubt. I'm not as much of a hip hop head, but from what I've heard of both, I'll take Reasonable Doubt. Brooklyn's Finest is I think my favorite song. So
okay, all right. Well, it's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. You're off the hot seat. That is the end of the show. I want to thank you for coming on. If you can, tell everyone where they can find you on social media and what all things that you are working on.
For sure. On Instagram, let me make sure I don't mess this up. It is Martenzie J, MartenziEJ. On Twitter, it is 10Z Johnson. As far as my current work, like you said, I just had the Travis Kelce one. about his business managers and kind of how they came to represent Travis. I had a Joshua Dobbs piece up. I'm not saying this just because like I want to be secretive or anything, but I don't really tip my hand on the next thing. But it does have something to do with the Cleveland Browns, so that it won't interest you at AFC South, but like it's in the AFC. But yeah, I have something on a Browns player in the coming weeks. But yeah, a few things. But check us out at Andscape, ESPN, all those sorts of places. Come on, so we're doing amazing work. Check it out. We have the top 25 rap albums, I think, or top 25 albums of the last decade. Piece we just dropped this morning, so go check that out. And of course our sports content. It's amazing. Read us, read people, read more.
That's right. I definitely read Andscape and ESPN, of course. Definitely gonna check out the top 25 the albums as well. I'm gonna check that out. But hey, if you can stick around for a moment after the end of the show. But I just want to tell everyone where they can find me on social media. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82 on the artist formerly known as Twitter. Of course, you can find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE _general _MP. And of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on YouTube. You can also find it listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find Touring the AFC South. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and we are out. Peace.